Netflix has been routinely disappointing me for months now. They're spending all their money on massive movies that turn out mediocre at best.
No offense.
Get it all the time.
Movies with a lot of hype that are quickly forgotten, so I had to dig deep for this video, but I'm gonna tell you about my favorite new releases first, movies like The Thursday Murder Club, then we'll cover the best movies recently added to Netflix, including a wacky 80s horror movie about a killer grizzly bear with George Clooney and Charlie Sheen. Then we'll wrap up with a few exciting titles coming later in September, like a new series from the writer of Peaky Blinders, 28 years later, and the long-awaited return of Alice in Borderland.
Stop. 25,000 by 9 a.m. Otherwise, it's off.
One of the recently released Netflix original movies I thoroughly enjoyed was The Night Always Comes, and even though it's not as good as the movies it tries to emulate, movies like Good Time with Robert Pattinson, it's still that type of movie, which is totally my thing. Vanessa Kirby's great in this. She's running around all night trying to gather up enough money to pay some debts. It's a storyline I've seen a dozen times. I'm a big fan of these types of movies. This one is relatively mediocre compared to some of the other movies in this subgenre, but as far as Netflix originals go, this one stood out to me. And so did The Thursday Murder Club, which obviously has a stacked cast. You've got Helen Mirren, who just steals every scene she's in this movie. Ben Kingsley, who kind of takes a back seat. It's one of the duller characters I think I've ever seen him play. And then Pierce Brosnan is fantastic in this as well. And it's kind of a lighthearted murder mystery. Think like a mix between Knives Out and Murder, She Wrote, and that's what you get with this movie. You know, it's got a made-for-TV vibe. There's not really anything particularly cinematic about this one, but if you like clever little murder mysteries, this is an exceptionally fun one.
Don't wake the dead.
And then one that's been impossible to miss if you've got kids is K-pop Demon Hunters. I'm not necessarily recommending this, but I will say, as far as Netflix originals go, not only is this movie better than almost anything I've seen Pixar putting out lately, but after its Netflix release, weeks after, meaning after everyone had the chance to see this with their kids, this movie made over $18 million in the United States box office, at least, in one weekend, which is pretty wild stuff, again, for a movie that already came out on Netflix. But as far as some of the best things they added this month, things they started adding on September 1st, I recommend Kandahar, starring Gerard Butler, even though it's a lot like Guy Ritchie's The Covenant, that movie he did with Jake Gyllenhaal, and I think it's not quite as good. It's got kind of a slower pace to it, and it took me a while to get into this one, but I did enjoy it. A Gerard Butler movie I enjoy way more, though, is the original Den of Thieves. Longtime subscribers know I hated, and I mean hated, the sequel to this movie. I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know what they were doing. There's just not much of anything that happens in that movie. The original is loaded, not just with action, but heist movie intrigue. It's got some cheesy elements, but they do not overpower the movie. It's a lot of fun with a hard edge to it, even if it's not the most realistic heist movie of all time.
I ain't cuffing up.
It's okay. I don't bring my cuffs anyway.
If you're getting any good recommendations here, clicking the like button is a good way to help me out. Subscribing is a good way to help yourself out if you want to get recommendations from me again in the future. They also just added Escape Room, kind of a boilerplate horror movie that does have a stunning presentation. Cinematically, it's kind of a beautiful horror movie. It's an eye-popping movie in more ways than one. And while I did enjoy it enough, I did recently release a top 10 list of escape room style movies. So if you enjoy Escape Room but are in the mood for something, better, you might want to check out that top 10 list I posted just a couple of weeks ago. But one of the wildest things I've seen recently on Netflix is a 1983 horror movie that was never completed until just a couple of years ago. They just added it to Netflix, and it is a weird one. It's titled Grizzly II. Now, believe it or not, this cheesy horror movie about a killer bear that is chock full of flaws actually features legitimate performances from legendary actors like Charlie Sheen, Laura Dern, and George Clooney, and they're all in one scene together. Yes, they all get mauled by the bear, and yes, it's the opening 5 minutes of the movie, and you never see any of them again. It's such a wild watch, and the thing is, none of them were famous when this movie was filmed, so it's kind of crazy to have this released all these years later. It's a blatant attempt at a Jaws ripoff, and my goodness, did they drop the ball with this one in almost every way imaginable. And in fact, like I said, the movie was never finished. They somehow finished it recently, but they did it with stock photography, stock concert footage that is somehow worse than the footage that was in the original movie, which is like eye-bleedingly bad. So I'm not recommending this movie, but if you like discovering just odd, weird, wackadoo movies, Grizzly II is the #1 pick on Netflix right now. But for some science fiction picks, I recommend Selfless, a criminally underrated Ryan Reynolds flick. In this movie, a billionaire, actually played by Ben Kingsley, is dying and wants to go on living, so he takes part in an experimental procedure that puts his mind into a younger man's body, a younger man played by Ryan Reynolds. That's the setup. That's really all you need to know. But it's a surprisingly interesting movie. It's not Christopher Nolan level stuff, but it does try to go there at least a little bit. This one's a lot more interesting than it is cinematic, and ultimately it's flawed as well, but still comes as a strong recommendation.
You okay?
Fine. I just haven't seen anything like that in about 52 years.
I also strongly recommend the Schwarzenegger classic Running Man, mainly this month because the reboot or remake is coming out soon. It's directed by Edgar Wright, who's famous for Shaun of the Dead, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and Baby Driver, so I'm excited to see the new Running Man. I legitimately think it's going to be a pretty awesome movie, and I love the original, love it, so much that even if I love the new one, I'll be surprised if I like it as much as the original. Still a just highly rewatchable Schwarzenegger flick. And then E.T., they just put it on Netflix. I know you feel like you've seen that movie too many times. It is a damn near perfect movie, especially for like a PG-rated family watch. I recently just watched it with my 7-year-old daughter. We were both in tears. She loved it. It is still, to this day, a movie that kind of strikes you emotionally just as hard as it did when it released. Edge of Tomorrow is always more awesome than I remember. It's got that Groundhog Day thing happening, so you think you're going to be kind of getting tired of it. I've seen this movie a handful of times, and it is a wild, fun, exciting thrill ride from beginning to end, even when you know what's going to happen. If it's been a while since you've seen this one, it's definitely one of my top picks out of everything they've added recently. It's also been a long time since I've seen Inglorious Basterds. They just brought that back. It's really one of Tarantino's best. Maybe not my favorite, but as far as film making goes, it's some of his strongest work, some of his strongest writing as well. I just love Brad Pitt's character, even though he's kind of shoehorned into the movie. It's just been a while, so I'll be watching it.
Man under my command owes me 100 Nazi scalps. And I want my scalp.
Another fantastic drama that they just added is Paul Thomas Anderson's The Phantom Thread. Maybe his most underappreciated movie. He has his newest one coming out later in September, so it may be a good time to revisit The Phantom Thread, one of his more recent movies. It's a slow burn. You gotta be into Daniel Day-Lewis performances to really enjoy this movie, but it ultimately went to a place that surprised me, and Paul Thomas Anderson hasn't really done that in a while. For me. And then, my top 2 picks out of everything they just recently added include Hostiles, an amazing Western that is very bleak. It's got a dour story to it, but it is just cinematically breathtaking, top-notch performances from just every single person in the movie. Just an amazing Western that deals with some incredibly heavy themes, but it also handles them in a pretty tender way.
Understand this. When we lay our heads down out here, we're all prisoners.
And then Wind River has returned. This movie is in the top 10 on Netflix currently, along with all 4 Shrek movies. That gives you an idea of how slim the pickings are on Netflix right now. But Wind River is an amazing movie. It also has some heavy themes. This was actually written and directed by Taylor Sheridan before he started doing Yellowstone and all of those hit TV shows, and it's just an amazing sort of neo-noir movie that takes place out on a Wyoming reservation. If you've never seen it, it's incredible stuff. It, too, does get into some really heavy themes, but it is just top-notch writing and filmmaking. Now, those are my top picks out of everything recently added to Netflix, but later in the month of September, there's some interesting stuff coming, like Ice Road Vengeance, a sequel to Ice Road, which was a Netflix original movie here in the United States. I think a pretty decent Liam Neeson action movie for a Netflix original. With the sequel not being a Netflix original, hopefully there's a little bit more gas in the tank and we get a little more out of it. Look for that on the 15th. Then on the 18th, Black Rabbit gets added, a new limited series. Jason Bateman and Jude Law, I believe, play brothers in this limited crime series that definitely has some Ozark vibes, so I'm going to be checking this one out on the 18th. 28 Years Later is getting added on September 20th. It's probably the biggest new release to hit Netflix in quite a while. I know people had mixed feelings on this movie. I actually loved it more on the second watch. It is a bit anticlimactic, but if you didn't know, the sequel to this movie already has a trailer. It's titled The Bone Temple, and I really think 28 Years Later is just a setup for a much more epic movie that, again, is coming out in January. So even though 28 Years Later was a bit slower paced than I think a lot of people were expecting, it does look like they're going to crank things up quite a bit with the sequel. So you should definitely watch 28 Years Later, especially if you enjoyed the original 28 Days Later. On the 25th, Alice in Borderland returns for its long-awaited third season. I loved the first two seasons of this show. It's like a more fantastical version of Squid Game. There's like supernatural things happening, yet the main characters are trying to get through these death trap games. Very well written. The first season's just incredible. I'm hoping the third season's a banger as well. And then House of Guinness has my interest. It's also getting added on the 25th, and it's from the writer behind the Peaky Blinders, doing the backstory of Guinness Brewing. Should be pretty incredible stuff. Here is a recap of the list, but I will keep making these videos as long as y'all keep watching them. Thanks for watching this Netflix list, and you will see me on the next one.